Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 4 of the Monday Q&A, so let's do it. Ever plan on getting a tattoo? Oh God, I don't have any tattoos, I don't have any piercings, I'm not interested in piercings, I don't even like the concept of it. But as far as tattoos, yeah, I want some. I really, in all honesty, if I wasn't serious about my powerlifting right now and my squatting, something I've been wanting to do for a while is because I have such a wide back, and you guys all have seen how wide my back is. I have such a good canvas there that I would love to give a skilled artist an opportunity at some point to just do their work and give me some sort of awesome tattoo across, my back and my lat span. I think it would be really fantastic because, again, I think a lot of tattoo artists would love to have a canvas that big to work with. And I would love to do something like that, other than it would take me away from squatting for a couple of weeks, and that's not a viable option for me. But I've always wanted to get something done across my back, and I've changed my mind over the years as to what I want. So at some point, if I ever say, hey, I want to take a few weeks off from squatting, I may very well jump at that opportunity to get that done. Just because, yeah, I do think it would be pretty cool. All right, next question. I've always trained the stretch reflex on my squat and now thinking of entering my first meet thanks to candito and the juggernaut. Should I try to train just to meet depth, hip joint just below the knee? What saves the most energy or uses the least force strength, the stretch reflex or extra depth saved? There's no reason for you to not do, particularly a lot of your volume type work or your density training. Go ahead and go deep. If you can, if you're doing 8 triples or 10 triples, do them deep. Drop that shit rock bottom. But when you start doing your max effort work, it's not a bad idea to train just to meet legal depth or a ½ inch or so below. The only thing to be aware of is that you've got to make sure that you're consistent once you start doing that, because it's very easy once the weight starts getting heavy to start squatting high. And I can tell you, as someone who is now certified at a meet, I absolutely red lighted one of the officials in my federation for depth because he was an inch high. He was clearly an inch high, and that's very common if you start changing your depth a lot. So just be aware, if you start training to barely hit meet depth, you need to make sure that you are consistent every single time over and over and over. But yeah, you will be able to squat more. If you don't go 2 inches below parallel and you just hit meet legal, you will probably be able to squat more weight. It will add more to your max, so it will get you further in competition. But again, you have to be aware of the fact that if you're right at that bleeding edge, as the weight starts getting heavier, we tend to cut ourselves short, and you are going to run the risk of getting red lighted. All right, next question. Is there any point in taking BCAAs in a fasted state IF protocol in order to kickstart protein synthesis and ensure that there's way more protein is synthesized and broken down during the fasted lifting? Okay. I am not opposed actually to BCAAs for people who are fasted, who use IF. I'm not convinced that they're useful for that. I'm not opposed to it because they fall into that category of they might actually be useful there. I think they can be useful for people who train multiple times a day with very high volumes. Oh yeah, I would actually recommend them for those people. That's probably the only people I absolutely recommend them for. However, you people need to get this idea out of your head about that protein breakdown is always a bad thing. That catabolic conditions are always a bad thing. It displays, and I know it's a simplistic mindset, but it really displays a profound ignorance of the way the body's balances anabolism, metabolism, and energy turnover. If you are bulking and you're in a calorie surplus and you're eating every 2 hours and you're on anabolic steroids, guess what? You will have periods of time in the day to where you are catabolic and have large amounts of protein breakdown. Even in that situation, it's going to happen. It's unavoidable. You shouldn't sit around worrying about it. You should be worried about, am I getting a higher anabolic turnover? And in fact, protein breakdown is an essential part of the muscle building process. If you're not getting it during your training, you're not stimulating new growth. It's just an essential part of the growth process. And it's even the same with fat loss. A lot of people aren't aware of this, but when you are cutting, even if you're in a calorie deficit, you're doing cardio every day and you're taking fat burning drugs, there are periods of time every single day to where you gain fat. There are hours in the day at some point where you gained more fat than you lost. And so it works the same way there. So you've got to get out of this mindset of trying to always minimize it every hour of the day. You shouldn't worry about that. You need to be worried about as long as your total net protein turnover and total net protein synthesis is positive, you're gaining muscle. People really tend to overthink this too much, and it really becomes mental masturbation. But if you want to try BCAAs and see how it goes for you in a fasted state, go for it, as long as you're not paying a lot of money for it. If they're actually hurting your budget to do so, I think it would be silly, because it falls into one of those categories of it might help, and they're relatively cheap enough that it's not a big deal. But for most people, I think they're a waste. People who aren't fasted and people who definitely are not training twice a day and who eat regular balanced meals, I think they're a complete waste. I see no benefit or point. So give it a try. Alright guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 5.